Hey, what's up everyone? Tedrick85 here, and today I thought I would make this short video to talk about my top 10 favorite episodes of Avatar The Last Airbender. I think this is around a good time. Not only is this the end of the year, but since The Legend of Korra ended, I figured I would do a video on my favorite Avatar The Last Airbender episodes, as well as my favorite Legend of Korra episodes, which will be coming out sometime after this. Book 1, Chapter 1, The Boy An Iceberg. What better way to begin this list than by talking about the very first episode? It does what any good first episode should do, introduce us to the main characters and establish the main conflict in the series going forward. And it does this rather beautifully. Right off the bat we get to see the interaction between Aang and Katara and Sokka when the Water Tribe siblings free him from the iceberg. And it's neat seeing him behave like any normal 12-year-old would before he learns of how the world has changed since he was frozen. Book 3, Chapter 2, The Headband. This is one of those episodes which I can't personally understand why people don't like it. I think this is a pretty fun episode to watch, as we get to see Aang be confronted by just how much the Fire Nation has changed since he was frozen in the iceberg, and how trouble he got himself into by trying to do things like he used to. What I really liked about this episode is how he was able to teach the Fire Nation students to express themselves through dancing. And you can see most of them embracing it, as well as a rather awesome scene where Aang and Katara perform a capoeira dance. Book 3, Chapter 5, The Beach. Not only do we get to see more of the emotional quandary Zuko finds himself in, but we get to get a glimpse of the backgrounds and lives of Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee. Perhaps the most powerful scene in this episode to me is where the three of them and Zuko are at the campfire, and they learn about themselves and each other through their low points in their lives. Despite having some seriousness in the episode, there are quite a few funny moments in it. My favorite in which Azula scares off Long John with her advances towards him. Book 1, Chapter 3, The Southern Air Temple. This is where Aang is confronted with the fact that not only has the world changed drastically since he froze himself in the iceberg, but he is the last surviving airbender after the Fire Nation conducted a genocide on the air nomads. I found myself teary-eyed watching this episode for the first time, as it was hard not to sympathize with Aang and feel his pain when he saw his people and his beloved mentor Gyatso destroyed. This was the episode that really had me cheering for Aang and hoping he would fulfill his destiny on being the avatar the world deserves. Book 3, Chapter 9, Nightmares and Daydreams. I love how instead of being an episode filled with nerve-wracking anticipation of the day of the Black Sun, they turned it into a humor-filled one. The fact that Aang is fearful of fighting the Fire Lord in and of itself isn't funny at all, to say the least, but it's how his fears are expressed that come across as rather odd and rather humorous. Combine that with the efforts of Katara, Sokka, and Toph to help him out, and you get treated to a rather fun episode to watch before the solar eclipse approaches. Book 1, Chapter 12, The Storm. I find this episode memorable because it shows that Avatar, Aang, and Zuko really aren't that much different from each other in the fact that they are trying to find the right path to their destinies. We get to see Aang run away from having to face his responsibilities of being the Avatar, whereas we see how Zuko got his scar and how he became banished from the Fire Nation. Not only did this make me feel for Aang, but it also made me feel sympathy for Zuko, even though he was the main antagonist in this book. Book 2, Chapter 7, Zuko Alone. This is a pretty powerful episode as we get to see what life is like for Zuko since he became a traitor of the Fire Nation. It does a good job showing the inner conflict that Zuko has within it and deciding what path to take in order to fulfill his destiny and restoring honor to himself. It also shows what life was like for him before he was banished, which was hard for me to watch considering how much he loved his mother and how he misses her. Trust me, if this episode won't make you feel bad for Zuko, especially after watching The Storm, then nothing will. Book 2, Chapter 5, Avatar Day. This episode might not have had anything to do with the main storyline with Team Avatar dealing with Princess Azula, May, and Ty Lee, but I really enjoyed this episode because it has Aang facing the consequences of his past life in the form of Avatar Kyoshi, and redeeming himself by saving a town from a Fire Nation's soldiers, and restoring the image of the Avatar as being someone to be looked up to. Book 3, Chapter 22, Sozin's Comet Part 4, Avatar Aang. I know there's a bunch of people that put this episode on the top of their lists, and I was almost half tempted to myself. It serves as a fitting end to an extraordinary journey in which we saw Aang go from being a boy in an iceberg to being a full-fledged Avatar, and fulfilling his destiny by defeating Fire Lord Ozai. As good as this episode is, it's not my personal favorite, as there is one that I love even more than this one. Book 2, Chapter 6, The Blind Bandit. Not only is this my personal favorite episode, but I think it does a masterful job introducing Avatar fans to arguably the most awesome female character in animation, Toph Beifong. The episode may only be 22 minutes long, but in that time we get to learn exactly what Toph is all about, not only in terms of her abilities, but also in terms of her personality and what her feelings are in regards to her family and her hidden earthbending abilities. This is Tedrick85 speaking. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.